clicker to get to the PowerPoint. You can click one of the, is it on?
Great. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. I think we're waiting for a couple more, but do you think we should go ahead and get started? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So if you haven't gotten something to eat yet, please do. I'm Beth Quindry with Shockey Consulting. I have Gabby Danback with me, and joining us on Zoom, you can't see her, but April Snee from our Kansas City office is tuned in there on Zoom to follow what we're doing. So, so the purpose of tonight's meeting is to bring you some information that we have on the market analysis and some highlights from that. And then we're also going to give you some highlights of the public engagement that we've heard so far. So I'll take probably about a third of those reports, which the engagement report we shared with you earlier this week, and then I'll send you the market analysis as a follow-up tomorrow. So we're going to hit some highlights so we can get to a point where we're talking about what we're seeing is the major implications for the plan from that work. So at this point in our process, we're really, I'd say a little bit more than halfway through our planning process. We have a really good sense of what the vision for the plan will be, and the direction that the community is, the big themes that we're hearing from the community. And so one of the other document that you got ahead of the meeting was the framework, which has the vision and then goals and strategies. And we're looking at that really as the outline for the comprehensive plan. So I'll check in with you on that during the meeting today to see if there was anything that you feel like is missing, or that you feel like we need to tweak. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time during the meeting on that document. But hopefully you had a chance to look at it beforehand, and then certainly we would take comments afterwards as well. But that is what you should know about that is that strategy exercise that we made you do last time was used to create that. So the strategies were organized into goals, and the goals were put under chapter headings that will be chapters of your plan. So that's where that work went that you did for us last time. So we'll share the information on the market analysis, on engagement, talk about what that means for the planning process. And then the second half of the meeting, we have some exercises for you to do to help us think about some land use issues. So you're going to look at Olive Boulevard and some slightly redefined character areas. Actually, they're not redefined. We just added one more. And then are going to have you kind of think about the 4 character areas on Olive Boulevard for us. And then we're going to talk about what to do with a couple of vacant parcels, how to categorize them for land use. And then we're going to have you think about alternative commercial locations. So we've talked about Olive Boulevard. We know that's the real economic hub for Olivet, but the community has expressed interest in more shopping, more restaurants, walkability. And so we'll look at some ideas for where that could go off of Olive and get your thoughts on that. So that's where we'll have you spend the second half of the meeting. And so that's the plan. And then we'll tell you what's coming up next. Any questions about what we're up to or what we sent you ahead of the meeting? Yes, Annie.
Will tonight's presentation include any of the, it's the last event, everyone was interested in like the trails that we're gonna possibly work out in the walkability and all of that. Is that going to be addressed at all tonight?
We'll touch on the walkability, the feedback that we got from the public in all our different forms of engagement. So you'll hear that, and then you see it in the vision and the framework. As far as specific locations, is that what's on your mind?
No, I had emailed Gabby and I never heard back from that other friend of ours. So I just was curious to see if maybe it was going to happen, but okay, maybe I'll get with Gabby on that. Thank you.
We'll connect with, we'll talk. I'll understand what you're saying and we'll Yeah.
Yeah, one thing as far as the survey.
Mhm.
Could we get a readout on the others for the challenges and the strengths? I noticed 10% of the strengths were other,
Other,
and it would
Yeah.
be interesting to kind of see what that is. I saw only 3%, I think, on the challenges. But I think that could speak to what we're doing, just kind of what the
Sure.
outliers were.
we'll even look that up for you during the meeting
Okay.
and we can report during your exercises. We can do that. Yeah. And thank you for reading the survey report. Yeah, Carol? Okay, sure. All right, well, let's get started here. So we did our meeting overview. So let's talk about the market analysis, and let me find my glasses. All right. So I'm going to be moving a little bit quickly through this because I want to get to the part where we're talking about the implications for the plan. Bear with me. I'm not going to be talking at rocket, high speed, but stop me if you have a question. So this is sort of the framing for the market analysis. The context in Olivet, we have highly rated schools, proximity to key industries, meaning 39 North and your northeast quadrant, a lot of jobs. There are affordable single family homes, and then there's retail demand and spending power here, and we'll talk more about that. So the market analysis is going to look at context for that, and I'll share some of that, and then we'll talk about the pathways for the plan, or kind of the direction that how the plan could respond to those market conditions. With creative single family, meaning maybe smaller lot single family or attached single family, something just a little bit different than a large lot, large home, would respond to some of what we're hearing from the community. Experiential retail and mixed use, walkability, and job growth. So those are some of the strategies I think that we think that the market context suggests. So the market analysis looked at 6 areas. And the point of the market analysis is to really understand your economy and think about who's here in terms of your population, your visitors, your jobs. What does that group of people want? What is the demand for goods and services in your economy? And what does that tell us about development potential? So population, thinking about population is really important as we do that. What we know from US growth rates and projections there are that things are trending down. So Olivet's population has increased from 2010 to 2020, and we know that strong growth. But when we look ahead, it doesn't look like that can continue based on projections nationwide and regionally for growth. So this shows you what happened 2010 to 2020, and you can see that Olivet's population grew considerably. Only Creve Coeur grew at a higher rate, and you outpaced the county in terms of growth. So really interesting to note is that Olivet's school age population grew significantly, reinforcing what we keep hearing from the community, which is that Olivet is, among other things, a great place for families and to raise kids. But look at how much better Olivet did than neighboring communities and the St. Louis County as a whole. So with excellent schools and affordable housing, Olivet's really appearing to be a community of choice for families. Something to note is that community members have expressed concern about apartments and the impact that apartments have on schools, which is really remains to be seen, because the numbers, like the Oliver wasn't constructed when these numbers were put together. It looks to us like it's the turnover in single family houses from, this is a little speculation, but looks like the turnover in single family homes from, a retired couple who leaves to downsize and a family moves in with 2 kids. That's what we see happening here that's contributing to the growth in the kids age 5 to 19. And you'll see later when we look at some apartment numbers, Creve Coeur saw an increase in the number of apartments, but a decrease in the number of 5 to 19-year-olds, which suggests that it's not families moving into apartments, at least in Creve Coeur. It's more people without kids. So still to be determined here about what happens with apartments, but it's looking like single family homes are really contributing to the growth in the school age population.
Here, let's
Beth?
expand.
Yeah.
I spoke with Keisha at the last meeting about this very issue. And I just wanted to get some idea of how the school district might respond.
Mhm.
And she said, you have to remember that the district itself does its own population projections.
Mhm.
When she said, which I kind of knew, but it wanted to hear her say it. But what was important is that they've planned for growth accordingly.
Mhm.
So like the apartments and so on aren't gonna have that many kids that it's a problem for the district.
Mhm.
And I thought that that was really interesting. And that was something that we need to hear from the district about, not just me telling you what she
Mhm.
said.
Mhm.
So we could ask her questions and so on. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
point that out.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're going to be using population estimates to project what housing needs are going to be, and that will have implications for your land use and for housing policy. So we know Olivet has a good mix of owned and rental housing. Overall, its share of rental housing is actually less than its neighbors and less than the county as a whole. Outside of Ladue, Olivet has more owner occupied housing than neighboring cities.
You might want to on that. If this is going to become part of the final report, the previous one, I think it's Wash U, not St. Louis U. In the previous.
Yes, yes, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Please use your microphone.
Is that the last slide? Is that single family housing units as a,
This one,
okay, it is a percentage. That's what I was wondering, because U City is huge compared to Olivet. So it's so in terms of a percentage, Olivet has fewer renting occupants.
renter occupied units.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that data is before our apartment complexes are really coming to fruition.
Uh-huh.
So we've got more multifamily, a lot more actually, in the works that aren't reflected in those numbers.
Right. These are 2021 numbers.
Oh, so this doesn't even include Oliver, that's now almost
It
full
won't.
occupancy. Oh,
It's not, it will change it a little bit. It'll change the percentages a little bit, but it's not going to change them significantly. So taking a little closer look at the type of housing structures in Olivet, and thinking about that, the rental units in particular. So Olivet has fewer housing structures with 20 or more units than the St. Louis County average. And it has slightly more 10 to 19 unit housing structures. So based on this, you can look at this, and again, this is before the Oliver, but Olivet has been historically more stringent with high density housing and more supportive of mid housing densities. Yes, ma'am.
again, I think this is all irrelevant right now, because my understanding is that between the Oliver, Price Crossing, and then after or across from City Hall, it adds something like 750 apartment units. That's
No, that's an incorrect fact.
okay. So
You're
how many-
right that it does increase it, but I'm not sure where you're getting the 700.
Okay, so
That's
then how
way
many-
out of
Okay,
proportion.
so then how many?
But they
apartment
will be
units?
adding 500 units.
Okay, 500
Yes.
units.
Okay.
So then that needs to be factored in, because that's a given. That's here today. We've already added 500 apartments.
Right.
No, we've
Um,
only had added 200 apartments to
with
date
the Oliver.
with the Oliver.
Mhm. Okay, so, and we're not, that we're reporting the latest data that's available, that's the census numbers are going to be a little bit behind what's constructed. So these numbers can be updated. And we'll do a little thinking about like how it would adjust the percentages based on what we know. It's not going to change them significantly. Because you're talking about thousands of units in these calculations. And so a few hundred will make a difference, but it's not going to change significantly. Hello. Okay. So when we put some of this together and we're starting to think about population scenarios, we feel like estimating population growth at 5% or less is probably makes sense. Given the projections on national growth declining, but the strong growth in Olivet over the last 10 years, maybe 3 to 5% is what we would estimate the population in Olivet to grow by in the next few years through 2030. And based on that, if that occurs, the housing with the existing vacancies that you have, an additional 110 new units would be needed, which are already sort of in progress with what we've just talked about. And so there's not, based on a modest population growth, there's not a huge need for new housing based on what we're seeing in the trends. Different housing maybe, but not a lot of new units. So another thing that we're going to look at, we looked at with market analysis was income, so we could consider the buying power of consumers. Household income is a strong indicator of retail buying power, obviously, and the ability to afford housing. Olivet's considered middle and high tier, a high income tier community. But we also know that it's a little bit more complicated than that because incomes north of Olive are different than incomes south of Olive, with those south of Olive exceeding those north by about 2 to 1. And so you have this sort of dual economy almost in that sense that we need to think about as we're thinking about economic development strategy and meeting the needs of everybody in the community. Something else we know is that Olivet is really a hub for work. Based on our latest statistics, which go back to 2019, almost 7,000 people commute into the city for work, and a smaller number commute out. And so workers are consumers, and so they're an important part of the economy. So we looked at, to project what the retail buying power was of the population in Olivet. We used the spending potential index, which I know this much about. Carol maybe knows more. Yeah. So spending potential index, I'm going to read this so I make sure I get it right. The spending potential index is household based, and it represents the amount spent for a product or services relative to a national average of 100. And so on this next graph, so you're going to see these are some key categories of the SPI that respond to some needs we have heard about here in Olivet. So anything that goes over that vertical bar exceeds the national average in terms of demand. So there's significant buying power here in key categories, including that household furnishing and equipment, food, entertainment and recreation, apparel and services. And then we know Olivet residents are very interested in more locally owned restaurants and boutique retail options. So as a final note here on the market analysis, we looked for retail gaps, and the only thing that we could really identify as missing was a big box store like Target or Walmart, which you don't really want, probably based on conversations I've heard, and you have it close by. Carol's ambivalent about that, but you have it close by. So it didn't seem like a gaping, yeah, it's close. Yeah. So that's your highlights of market analysis. So let's look at engagement topics and kind of see how these things are coming together. So the engagement activities, just to bring you up to date on what we've been up to. the community workshop seems like a long time ago now. It was in May. And it was great. There were a lot of people there and several of you were there, most of you were there. So we were really pleased with how that turned out, but we got 76 surveys from that. We kept the surveys open through the end of June. And we got, and then we had our community survey was open till the end of June. And so we had 350 responses to that. And we were happy with those results too. So we had a couple other engagement opportunities with Olivet Night Out. And Indian Meadows had a community meeting that we were able to attend with them. So that's engagement activities. So let's see what we found out. So, so the topics that were in the survey, and most of the results I'm going to share with you are from the survey because that's where we have the most concentrated feedback from people. These were the topics that were covered in the survey. Looking at how satisfied people are with Olivet. So this was interesting, and there's a little bit of tension here, which is interesting. So Olivet ranked was a lot of people said, most people said it's a great place to raise a family, and very satisfied with it as a place to raise a family and as a place to live in general, those top two bars. Okay, it's a place to retire and own a business, and then lower satisfaction with it as a place to dine and shop. So people are happy, but they want more. So another question said, do you see yourself living here in 5 years? Most people said, 87% of people said, yes, they do. And so to us, that says you may want to tweak some stuff, but you like it. And there are things that are more important to you than the restaurants and the shopping that keep you here. So things like the schools, affordability, the diversity. So we think that there's sometimes we feel like we're hearing the most about wanting restaurants and shops. And so I think there's a balance there. It's a mix of things that people are telling us that they like. So we asked a lot of questions about housing, and this just touches on some of the summary of what we heard, but we asked a question that said, what type of housing do you want, what groups or types of housing do you want to attract in Olivet in the future? So people told us they wanted housing that attracts moderate income earners, which is police officers, nurses, teachers, that kind of level of income. But they also told us they favor housing that accommodates walkability even more. So that was an option to say housing that is walkable to businesses and services. And so that was the most commonly chosen option. The least preferred groups to attract were first-time home buyers and young adults, which keep in mind that 94% of our respondents were homeowners. So that's important to be aware of as you think about that. In a separate question where we asked about the community's greatest challenges, housing affordability came up as the second most common result. And there were about 15 options listed there. So housing affordability, very top of mind for people. And then if you were at the community workshop, you might remember the housing station that we had. The staff from RISE was there talking to people about housing options. What they heard a lot about was wanting housing affordability, but tying it to single family detached options. So that's what we've heard so far about housing. So Olive Boulevard, you've seen similar results to this. I think we shared before last time we were together, and it didn't change a lot with the final result. So we asked a question about, basically, are we going in the right direction? Is the dynamic sense of place that was set out with the last comprehensive plan, is that direction how you want to keep going? And by and large, people said yes. 77% said yes, keep going. It was a very high level question, but that's what they told us. So the results reflect that we're on the right path. Olivet's on the right path. Not perfect, but on the right path. And then you can see the different kinds of different attributes of Olivet that they weighted on.
So the green was dissatisfied.
Yeah, the blue is very satisfying. Satisfied.
You have a question, Stephanie, or you just,
No, I'm
just absorbing?
Pondering.
You're just absorbing. Yes, okay. All right. We heard a lot about walkability in open-ended questions. And we think about we pay close attention to the open-ended questions because it's where we don't give them any categories. They just say what they think. So walkability was one of the things we heard a lot about in those open-ended questions. When we asked about transportation and priorities, the most commonly given response was prioritize maintenance of streets and sidewalks and trails. The second highest response was walking and biking. And then at the public meeting, we heard from our survey, when it comes to those walking and biking issues, people really want connections from neighborhoods to parks, and neighborhood less so to Olive. It's more neighborhoods to other destinations and neighborhoods and parks. We asked about the environment and priorities for the environment. And remember, in the plan, sustainability is really a theme that's going to go through the plan, touching on financial sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. So this is what we heard from in terms of the environmental priorities, with natural areas and habitats being the most common response there. Okay, diversity, we've heard throughout as is important to people in Olivet, really see it as part of their identity. It was the most common theme in open-ended responses. When people could tell us anything that they liked about the community, that was what came out on top. And diversity means usually race, ethnicity, also income and nationality. And then we would like some restaurants. So the greatest challenge, the top challenge out of 15 choices, was that we want to have more restaurants, retail, and entertainment options in the city. It was the second most common theme in open-ended responses after diversity. And then we did a quick poll in this room during the workshop to say, what kind of restaurants would you like? And we heard that people wanted, there were about 50 people that did that. And they wanted international cuisine, coffees and bakeries and fine dining. They did not want so much buffets or fast food restaurants. More local than heavily emphasized on local. So what did we hear about apartments? Because we've really been thinking about that a lot in our open forums, in the Mayor's Coffee, and then in Q&A here for the workshop. There's a lot of concern about apartments. The final question of the community survey was totally open-ended, so people could tell us whatever was on their mind. 11 people told us no apartments, so we heard about it a little bit, not a lot. And I would say more public engagement is needed there, where we're asking about different types of apartment. My suspicion on apartments is that but I want to do some more public input to see, is that there's resistance for the scale that's happened with Oliver and Price Crossing, and that's making people a little bit nervous. Apartments in general, maybe no. Olivet's had a lot of mid-size apartments for a long time, but the scale of what's come in recently is maybe what's driving our concern about apartments. So a little more needed there. And then looking at our participation, yeah, Carol?
I just want to add 2 cents to the apartment question.
Yeah.
For me, the way I kind of look at it is that in order to get the small retail shops and the kinds of things that I think I hear Olivet saying at once, up and down Olive Street Road, we need to, I know some people don't like these words, but we need to enhance the market area. And one way to do that is to say, we've got all these people in these apartments who need someplace to eat. And somebody will say, oh, let's capture that. To me, when we talk about the apartments, we need to think about that in conjunction with the desire for more growth along Olive. I don't think you can separate.
Okay.
That's just the way I would look at it.
Yeah. Annie?
I'm the assistant.
Okay.
I support.
Okay, hold that thought, because we're going to talk about some planning implications here in a minute, but yeah,
So what, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
yeah.
One of the issues that I see with the apartments and why people might be is the adjacency issue. In terms of how do we begin to integrate the single family with the apartments and at this point, we've kind of just dropped them in. And need to pay more attention to what's happening to the areas around it. I mean, don't want to get into the NIMBY kind of thing, but at the same time, how can we design the environment or the built space so that they're compatible with each other? So I think that's one of the things, rather than sort of airdropping in apartments where there's open land.
Okay. Carlos?
One other thing, and again, I struggle, along with the staff, on that concept of whether the term is, whether it's the apartments or it's the density. I mean, if there were condos, would it be considered any different than whether there were apartments? And I professionally, I keep thinking that it's more about that density and that mass. The current comprehensive plan pushed for higher, what we call floor area ratios. And to do that, you usually do height to maximize on the investment, the lack of land. If those are modified, again, I struggle with, is it apartments or is it the density? It shouldn't
density
be
of
about what
what it
the living
is.
type is.
Uh-huh.
And again, I struggle whether, like, if they were all condos, would people perceive that differently? And I don't think so. I
Mhm.
think that the issue is more about the density and the
Density of,
mass.
yeah. That's my hunch too. Mhm.
Because when we talk about leasing or rentals, we have single family rentals as well.
Yeah,
So it's really is a density. And I think that's what people need, but just don't use that terminology.
mhm,
It's not that. I don't think people in Olivet don't like rentals, period.
right.
It's
It's the
It's
density that in the mass and the mass. Yeah,
apartment units, we're not used to seeing that kind of. building
Yeah.
house. And it's throwing people off.
well, and as you think about your next comprehensive plan, if what we're assuming is moderate growth, where we don't need, there's not a demand for additional housing units. What does that mean to, like, how do we get the restaurants and when we can't just throw people at it, even if that was a settled issue in the community about wanting that, even if it was, if we're saying there's not demand, then what do we want to do?
I think, well, to the point there, excuse me, definitely more public engagement. And I'm just curious of those that are looking at the apartments and the developers there's attracting a certain group of young professionals. The price points that are pushing that higher
Mhm.
income, I'm concerned of the affordability factors. Then if other current ones that are more moderate income renters know that, for instance, Olive Crossing, I think a 2-bedroom is 2,700. The Oliver is just a 2-bedroom, 1,100 square feet, 2,725. So
Mhm.
you're attracting right there already.
Yeah.
Obviously a certain,
Yeah.
group that's just for a 2-bedroom. And so then the other ones that are currently owned, I don't know the names, but that are closer up to the ones on north and south that are on I guess they're more moderate range. How would those rents increase, knowing that 2725 is the new norm? Granted, they're brand new.
Right, I was
They
gonna
have a ton
say.
more amenities,
Yeah,
pools,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're top of the line, but I just think it raises a concern for the affordability factor.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a little earlier, but I was just gonna say apartments are inevitable and like every community around us are building new apartments. And
Mhm.
as of now, all I know is the Oliver is the new one and then that Olive Crossing. And right next to Olive Crossing, there are building restaurants and the hotel's there. There's gonna be a grocery store potentially there. So like there's like stuff that's there that's gonna aid all of that, what you're talking about.
Right, which is kind of to Carol's point, it's happening based on, and your coffee shop is right there, right? Yeah, that too. And that too. Yeah,
Really?
yes.
So I don't know if now is the time to bring it up, but we haven't, I'm thinking what is worrying people is we haven't talked anything about how we kind of preserve the neighborhoods that we have, because
Mhm.
people really like living here. And I think they're scared that this new development is gonna essentially ruin their neighborhood. You're gonna get all this traffic on Price and Dealman, and we're already seeing traffic on Obanum, and so I think somehow we need to somehow include how do we keep the feel of Olivet and the neighborhoods?
Uh-huh.
Because people those people said that they want to live here, they see themselves for the next 5 years, and right now we virtually have no restaurants, so they're not saying, well, I'm gonna move, but we don't have any restaurant, so it's like it's kind of this weird.
Like there's a good thing going here that we need to pay attention to, as well as the attracting new.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's what we're hearing.
Can I continue with
Yeah.
that? I feel like an answer potential could be attracting the young audience or the kids that go to the schools, like getting a voice from them, maybe seeing what they want to see, because we never heard from them. So something where you see what they want, what they feel. I think that could be a point of direction.
Yeah, so let me just show you. So this is to that point. Good segue. It's not kids, but so we feel pretty good about participation so far. It's where we kind of expected it would be. So the map shows you the representation geographically around Olivet. There are some groups that we want to talk to more because they participated at lower rates than others in the survey. So we're going to do focus groups in July with Black or African Americans, Asian Americans, renters. We had 11 renters complete the survey out of 351. So we want to talk to some renters. And then we're going to meet with a group of business and property owners too. And then we have some interviews that we're going to do with commercial and residential developers, neighboring communities on all sides, and then an environmental interest group too. So those are some gaps that were left after the survey that we want to pay attention to. So Rebel, it doesn't get us to school kids. That's a little tricky to get to the really young, even though the plan will be really coming to life as they are getting to be older, but yeah.
I would just on that, like not necessarily like young elementary kids. I would say like juniors in high school, seniors in high school, like getting a group of them, seeing what their input, like the ones that live in all of it. There's a lot of them here, so like getting a voice from them, and then
Like
yeah,
what would
well,
take to stay, asking like, what would it take you to stay here when you?
something like that.
Yeah,
Or like, what
Okay.
do they want to see? Like again, restaurants, like something like that. What is their direction? What do they feel
Okay.
like is needed?
okay,
Maybe we could target the young Chinese and Black people, because they're the audience that we need to get to anyway. And sometimes I feel like the older generations of those people that are a little bit harder to get to, the kids are maybe a little more
okay.
available.
Well, we'll think about that. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so implications for planning, we talked about the population growth and how that fundamental assumption is really going to drive some of our strategies, a lot of how we're thinking about what demand is. So I said we're about 3 to 5% is where we're landing with population growth. Olivet has a competitive advantage when it comes to up here it says Family Foundations, which is a particular market segment according to Esri, which is a demographic firm, but just think of it for now, it's families with moderate income. But Olivet, it seems to be a community of choice for that group. And so that's a strength for the community that we can build on. just some ideas to think about for retail development. You're going to be thinking a little bit about Olive today in your activities and alternative commercial. So just to get those thoughts going. Ideas for retail are thinking about activating the backs of buildings along Olive. So we think about the transition between residential and commercial.
I think you went too many.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that. We want to consider improvements to public infrastructure on Olive, exploring creative creative economy options. And so you're going to do that in your exercise today, thinking about how can we do commercial a little bit differently elsewhere aside from Olive. And then considering programs and maybe incentives that encourage commercial property owners to reinvest in commercial buildings. So there are just some ideas there. Then if we think about land use and housing, there are a couple of the groups that are in in sizable numbers are going to have similar housing demands. So as your groups right now that are in their 30s and 40s get older during the life of this plan, they're going to be interested in creative single family housing, as are younger families with younger families with lower incomes. I'm reading and can't get it right. But similar demand for those groups. Populations of higher incomes, like we're seeing in Olivet, and education levels are going to want walkability, higher density options, and mixed use. And that's a direction that you've been going, that we've been talking about. Maybe, how much of that needs to continue, or at what scale, but that continues to be something that looks to be a good strategy for you. And then residents want to protect Olivet's diversity, affordability, and just having it be a nice place to live and good to be in your neighborhood, right? So the plan could emphasize, in order to protect that diversity, strategies like protecting and increasing affordable housing, encouraging development that benefits the community, and you've got other examples up there. But that's pretty proactive role for the city. And so just something to think about as we're putting the plan together. We are hearing that this is kind of a direction you want to go. So a next step for us as we draft the plan is to come back with specific actions that would support this. And then you get to look at it again. So we'll have more specifics to share and you can think about it again, but I just want to put it out there today as a direction that we're going in. Make sure that's feeling right. Stephanie.
So you had the businesses should develop like the backside and things, and I was thinking actually the exact opposite, that there should be some kind of buffer between residential houses and buildings, because nobody wants to live next to a parking lot, have these bright lights, have noise, especially if restaurants are open. I don't want my house bordered next to a restaurant and yeah, I'm saying not in my backyard, but how many of these people that say they want restaurants, want to live behind a bar or a restaurant and have bright lights shining into their backyard?
So I think this is just calling for us to look at, potential upsides. So what if there was a street that dead end, like a lot of your streets do, dead end behind commercial, but there's a trail that goes from the end of that dead end street to Plant Haven, so people who can there are more connections between neighborhoods and Olive. That would be one example of how to kind of make the back of that commercial development work for the neighborhood. So
Right.
not ignoring the fact that there are lights and we need to still think about the negative impacts, but how can connections actually facilitate what people are telling us they want with
that brings-
walkability and.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that there should be something in the vision too that would discourage cut through traffic and some kind of screen or buffer. And that your example brought up an interesting point, because I don't know if we just had somebody applied for a recreational marijuana license, and it was on a dead end street. And that was the problem. Those residents wanted to be heard and didn't want all that traffic. They liked their street. They want their street as is. They didn't want it this busy traffic business on that street. So there's, in other words, the residents, the current neighborhoods and residents need to be listened to and taken into account. And
Yeah, and I think I think you're right. And I think that, yeah, Brad, do you want to say?
I think realistically, you really kind of have to be careful about this too, because you're also affecting property values. And property value is not necessarily in the way that's been put forward here. Take, for example, this, since it's brought up, the dispensary. It was on a dead end street, but all of the I listened, I wasn't able to make it to the meeting, but I listened to all of the issues brought forward. And if you took the idea of that it was a dispensary out, it all the issues were made that it was a commercial issue, that it was parking, that it was close to a park, etc. And the street that it's on already borders commercial property. It's already a dead end street, so it's already encumbered. So I would say that all those property values have those values baked into it already versus the type of establishment that was there. I think the arguments were strong against it for that simple fact. So there are a couple of things going there. You know, there were some newer houses that were built on that street in the $800,000. If you put them in another area, it probably would have been closer to $1 million. So location had a big deal to do with that. When people move into an area and they pay a certain price for that, then they start lobbying to change the area of the characteristics of the price of the area. That it's a difficult situation for the rest of the people to swallow.
May I? That lot, I think it brought up a very unique situation, all of that. I'm not sure which caused those horrible problems that we're talking about. I'm not sure that you would find that situation replicated in other places along Olive Street Road. That's kind of one of the things that I have asked Carlos if we could take a look at. In many ways, that's a zoning issue. And it's also leads to another issue, which is relates to, we need as a community, a better way in which to deal with mediation and conflicts between the density and commercial activity along Olive Street Road and the neighborhoods adjacent. Because certainly we don't ignore the adjacent neighborhoods anywhere. And but I do think and feel very strongly that we need a more structured process. I know Carlos, in many cases, he's been very extremely successful with using it, but that's very much been his encouragement and the encouragement of the planning commission. It isn't something set in stone, so to speak. It's not recorded.
So Carol, you're saying that you would like to see some more procedures that like people know will be enacted when these kinds of things come into play?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah, some procedures would be nice to rely on for the community.
Right, so that a developer knows and its neighborhood behind knows going in that we're gonna have a conflict here, and all of that as a community expects that this is how you'll begin to address the issues that each side makes up. But I think we need something.
Okay.
Gets to a lot of what Stephanie is referring to. I don't think we should ever disregard the neighborhoods behind, but
No.
it is extremely difficult when you're on the planning commission to, in many ways arbitrarily, balance those two things. It's much
Uh-huh.
better if the parties can work something out
Yeah.
the best they can.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And I think that I really think we need something like that.
Yeah.
Right, and I guess, and that's why I'm saying maybe something in the, because I looked in your, on your online, you posted visions from the other cities. And I read some of those, and they do have some, like Brentwood and De Pere and some of the other cities where you posted their vision statements. They have statements in the vision that they're like here, Brentwood said, enhance the city's residential neighborhoods while providing a diverse range of housing. So they say maintain and enhance the city's residential neighborhoods while providing a diverse range of housing opportunities.
Okay.
So we don't say, and I think we need something to say that, hey, we're going to protect the housing that we have. You know, we're going to
Mhm.
somehow give the current homeowners, I guess, as much deference as the new.
Well, that's a good segue to what we wanted to talk about next. So
Yeah.
the framework,
Yeah.
yes.
One thing that I would talk about, kind of taking in a little different direction, but as you talk about connections and so forth,
Mhm.
I don't think we should lose sight that along Olive, there's a tremendously wide right of way. And so that there's some options that we have to create walkability, sort of lawn spaces between the street and sidewalks, and some of that might enhance some of those connections. I mean, it takes care of walkability, it takes care, and the land is already state owned.
Mhm.
I mean, we'd have to work with
Yeah.
them, but so.
Okay, thank you. So that you have it, your place there, the framework document, it starts with the vision. And in the interest of time, I'm going to assume that you all read it this week and have taken it to heart. And the vision really did not change very much from the modifications that we made together at your last meeting. We put these statements to the community at the workshop, and they kind of fleshed out some ideas that we reflected here, but it really just changed kind of the examples of how that statements could come to life. It didn't change the statements themselves. So I think I feel like from the workshop, we really got buy-in from those who attended on the draft that had been developed. And Annie and Omar and Rod had helped me along the way. So thank you. Made some good edits. It was Rob, I think. No. It wasn't you, it was Rob. Yeah, sorry. Yes, but thanks for the help on that. So so we had a pretty good discussion on the vision last time. And so if it's all right with you, we're going to keep going and get to our exercises that we have for you tonight. But we are, please spend time with the outline. We tried to really capture what you all told us in the strategies exercise, and then what we heard in the community workshop and from you on the vision. So we feel good about it, but this is your outline for the plan. So if you haven't had a chance to look yet, please do, and then just follow up with us. We'll take comments anytime. You can send them by email or you can call us, and we'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Okay. Well, let's talk about what we are going to do for the next portion of your meeting. Make sure I didn't forget any. No, good. Okay. We'll get to that at the very end, what happens next. Okay, so we have three exercises for you to do tonight. You are going to be in 3 groups. My first group is here, and it will be, so Darren, you're not going to be in. Have you been in a group before? Yeah, okay, so that's fine. So we'll take the three of you sitting here. So we're Belle and Jim and Darren. You're gonna go over to the Olive Boulevard character area station first. From Annie to Stephanie, you're gonna go straight back to the alternative commercial station first. And then this side of the table, you're gonna go over to the vacant properties table first. So you'll all be working simultaneously. But let's walk together through the playbook. So this will describe your exercises, but let's get a handle on what we're doing before we break up. So first, the Olive Boulevard character areas. So take a look at the page that looks like this. You've got this drawing is from, or map is from the Olive Boulevard Conceptual Master Plan, which imagined 3 areas for Olive. We refined those areas and identified one additional area, which we're for now calling Uptown, creating 4 distinct character areas along the corridor. So when you get to that map, it will have 4 character areas. For this activity, you're going to review the description of each one and then provide your thoughts on how we can support the concept of each character area. And you have some prompts on the next series of pages. So like the first one looks at the West End, which is on the west end of Olive, tells you a little bit about the West End as it is currently described in the master plan. And then it says, consider what level of the following characteristics would support this vision in your response. So it lists things like density, building height, parking location. So you don't have to address every single one of these for every single character area. Those are just meant as prompts for your conversation. No, well, you can, I mean, you can always like star things that are really important or, you know, but you don't have to give us a hard ranking for each. Yeah. Yep.
Just consider the ones that are relevant for that area.
Yep. And you can pick and choose among them for what gets the most of your attention. So you've got that same conversation for the 4 districts that comprise the 4 character areas on Olive. So that is the first activity. So for each of these, we're going to give you 25 minutes and we'll kind of watch time and see if you need that much or what. So after the first 25 minutes, you'll move to your next activity. So our second alternative commercial area, what we're going to have you look at there. As you know, Olivet's commercial development is solely concentrated on Olive. So incorporating commercial and retail elsewhere could increase access to certain amenities. There are also a lot of different types of smaller scale retail that could be incorporated in a community. So we just want to play with those ideas. So there's going to be a large map that you go to back there, and it's identified a few areas where that could potentially happen. So small scale or neighborhood type commercial. Most of the locations that you'll see identified are in parks, and so they're city owned, or they're on other publicly owned property. But a few would require working with private landowners. So those are distinguished by different colored dots on the map that you'll see back there. So for that activity, you're going to be thinking about, would you support retail in those locations? Do you think it makes sense? You've got a list of questions to kind of feed your conversation there. What type of commercial do you think would be supported in that area? And then you've got some pictures in your playbook here about different examples of businesses that can happen in that park setting at different scales. So food for thought with the pictures. Then you've got pictures of neighborhood businesses too. So that is your second station. And the final one, there are a couple of vacant properties up in the city's northeast corner. So we want you to think with us about what land use should we designate for those vacant parcels. So the first part of that exercise is going to have you think about like what type of thing should go here, how should we decide? And there's some questions in the background there that you can think about, thinking about. And I'm on the first page of the exercise under part 1. Should this site generate revenue for the city? Should the city explore funding remediation? Because that site has some issues that you can read about there. So I think when you get together with your group on that one, you can read the background information and then start thinking about the questions. And then the second part of that activity will just have you kind of brainstorm for us about what could go there. Beyond like just the general considerations that we ask you for in that first part, if you were making it up, what would you suggest? What do you think would work? So those are, that is your work. So we, 25, 95. Yeah, so we're going to start with 25 minutes per group, and we'll just kind of see how you go. You might do it faster than that. So we'll let you know when it's time to move from one to another. So again, we've got Darren and his side going over to the Olive Boulevard character area. Stephanie to Annie. You're making I have to redo my groups. Yeah, okay, yeah. So let me go Stephanie to Carol back. And then we go Annie to Jim over to the vacant opportunity areas first. Oh, sorry. Do you know what to do? I just messed it up by what I just said, but do you understand? Okay, yeah. As long as you know what's going on, that's what matters. And I think if April is still there, thank you for joining us, April.
Thank you all.
Okay, cool. And you're welcome to write it down.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. But make sure you're talking about yeah. Yeah, here's the last one. Yeah. Yeah. Parks and Ryan, which is parks is about 7. There is.
So the red one replaces that.
Yeah, primarily, like, that side can be cleaned up,
when it comes to privately owned, if there are big labs, right? Right now. So it doesn't, we already have land use. It is currently built. And like, industrial, so that was kind of wanting it to be like, you know, or it's like school, and then all unknown, what else is out there, you know? Environmental remediation, we don't want to get to that would include any other type of development, including multifamily, about commercial. Like garden. I'm gonna get sent right. Thank you. Okay.
6-foot sidewalks.
I mean, not everybody.
Well, yeah, no, I so I went to take part.
As far to be a, you know, be an add-on. You have the advantage of implementing, it is really positive of yeah, I for sure want David, basically, so people that you can do like anything, you can get around that generation. Wouldn't necessarily be then. But it would be like, would you like to have would you like to have change something like that? Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Anything, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, I know. Right. But I'm fine with that. But that's not. There's some rail lines up here, like, and, county.
I would say all that and all of our.
They don't know.
I'm in the midst of one. No, it's
where, we have, you know, big low density residential. I know, right, like all of. Oh, I mean, it's. Same thing on my.
So.
You're thinking about,
Well, from here. You know, here.
Yeah.
I realize David is probably outside and have side.
All right, you guys got one on.
Not that. They're not.
Here's the way I do it. Let me just. Like one, if we're thinking about the area. But it actually talk about like getting the bid on. Thinking about this day, about. Still, like. What else needs to be here in terms of the plan use of the building, anything, yeah, that's not. Right? Every Sunday. It's not. I think that.
Here.
I don't.
Since they're here.
Oh, I know.
Church. Oh.
Yeah, so there's another.
Always
here.
And that-
Yeah. Cemetery.
Like, I'm not sure which opportunity. What about like going through that? It's like, like up or The front page that goes closer to the buildings closer to the street, parking behind.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty good about it.
The kind of people wanted was.
There's.
Yeah, like, my God, people out there, one has the top thing. So.
Nobody wants to carry. It's not that we need to. That's the first thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's already there.
Whether there's code issues, no, you hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But that's. You don't want to. And they kind of have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Do we know where are there any areas along the flooding?
for like need infrastructure. Right now. We're actually having voice the most.
Okay.
Like the flooding.
Things like that.
So there's one down here, so the. Providing that part of the.
Okay, other than that, sort of maybe like maybe the area of the clubs or that is the residents of that are clear as they're. So. No, I don't know.
I agree with you.
Yes. Okay, I mean, same one. These people. And they're with you, because you're in interactive area. Yeah. Like for you, yeah, we're talking here about, yes, so obviously, like, you're most trapped in. Anyway, you can't hear, and so like, chicken coop and I think I'm loving that, you know, maybe not there. But. You're gonna see. You guys, so we're gonna have like 5 minutes. Make sure. I think like that, you're saying it's like wire on. Yeah. And you're right, we're all. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
I don't know what that would be.
There's a lot, and I don't know. Maybe not. I know that.
Speaking of 1.7.
Yes. No, there's little school.
I mean,
How long is there down here? Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's. And then.
They are not like, I did put,
I know there's like. Around here. But it's all.
They're on the side. Yeah.
This is all. All this.
Yeah. It's understandable, okay, no, and, that's very complicated. Can't be, and, if they are. We haven't received any. Yes. So this is vacant opportunity, right? So, yeah, your guys' activity will answer. You have this. Activity to go here.
These were. I like that.
Now there is space out front that is unused, and they might. They were, going through 40,000 square foot building, and so I think we have to do everybody can.
Yeah, I mean, but.
Yeah, so. Get a need.
That's right.
It's intimidating, but it's
Surprise. I don't. One more second. So that was my first thing. I mean, I don't know that I said that. Yes.
However, well,
Like.
basically, that upgrade. Like, many, if you want the garage, that's like, right? Down the building, so, and they have done, so that, but that one's kind of like one of the other. So, yeah. Maybe make it go. Wow.
And so that's that.
It's like.
They never did because there was infrastructure. There is.
It's made. Where the new hospital. And then they, something made, grading.
So for instance.
So that's kind of. The medium law. Maybe you guys. And so how you're coming to find. Right now. But it's funny. Your apartments.
That's like, I feel like we're.
Apartments. And then you have,
That's like, again.
Somebody else got it.
You should have. There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's first. No, no, we always talk about it. People that don't want to.
Honestly, like, that's what I want, that being. I was wondering. I can't.
I think we're just trying to get our fairings, and this is 3 hours, like we're. Also, really say that, and it's, please, yeah, the meeting held, we didn't.
Right. Before the here, that, so, yeah, we did. I mean, some of the green space here into the zero. Well, I want on the parts of the water.
What I see here is. And it's a lot of acreage. As far as, I never know why that. Sorry about that. So, anyway, and there are some things, you know, like. What's it? Yeah. It's Yeah, I don't know, Jack, touch it. I actually took it. Okay, agreed. So what we're thinking about are privately owned.
Right, those are positive, but then there are comments. Tower.
The pop-up shop, like. Yes. We are. And we also have, potentially. Some of it is.
Yeah, sure.
We actually. Yeah. You know, it's got, yeah, you got the courtyard, building.
But I mean,
I was sort of talking about it. I mean, I think it's like that. I don't really know the conversation when I'm going to leave that. It's not very hard. So I'm building stuff on the street.
what do you think? So
Well, we have a it would be. And it needed parking, so it's what.
And then. There.
I'm sure. Yeah, that was originally. I don't know.
There's something.
And you don't want to mess with the moms.
Yeah, that back, like, you know, where the baseball fields.
Oh, and all of that. I guess. There's a lot of hospitals. I think the chance on somebody putting something. Yeah.
That's good now.
Let's wait, see.
Like, that's the. I mean, below the So they're really great. This year, they're already gonna start. They're gonna go around 4 times. So yeah. When you. I am. We can bring this all. I'm having all this time. And extend. Not your. Yeah. Can I say? Yeah. Bakery, that is.
Like something like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Already established. Okay. Okay. Me, man. You better not have it.
Yeah. You see the little rod, but I hope you don't. Yeah. Oh.
Right. Well, I don't know. Yeah, so. Right, yeah.
It's work. Yeah.
Primarily.
See better? Okay, so that's where you got your house. Oh, okay. When you were talking about this, right?
Oh, that's. Incentivizes students to take the class and they've seen that part, which is good. I think that's something. So I'm excited that I do it. And then. No, I would. It's kind of like design.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So they, it's not that.
Because all the time I find out But again. Have you ever been on this one? Yeah, they have a lot of backyard. That's like saying we need something.
No, I mean, I'm saying that in order to.
Yes. But right now, there's very. It's then so. That's how.
How much? Is there any one that's gonna be able to down? Yeah. The best to make it works. This has been. Because it will. And then who comes in that?
To make something really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This.
Or like a group on Friday nights.
I didn't hear. I mean, no, both. No. Okay.
Reading through the character, how it's described, and how, and then deciding if that, this would be really great, that sort of thing, that, so really like I said, I think about different, they're gonna have. Kind of looking at.
But I think I'm getting that stuff. I'll think of it, whatever all the time.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of develops. Starting to come. A lot of things. Things and like the left hand will be, there's a lot of that. All of it on low gas. Somewhat. Yeah, that's good. That worked out. Oh, you're good. Yeah. And then you have to hold.
Right, and then I took it. The other thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see the one?
they're not going to speak. Well, I know, so it's hard. But it's just.
It's gonna be.
Right now. It's not done, but it would be good. It's a room with it. From like, so I have some. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's not done.
Yes, mayor judging.
You're right. Yes. Yeah. You know what?
Very true.
But there's future things that go in there. You know, so we want to look, we want to see all of that.
I know. The whole thing right now. And that can be done by. Let's say the city center. Bring buildings closer to. I can get away. This part of that. We didn't have to. Yes, but.
Yes, well, the air quality, having where. I do get to do all Now, okay, so one thing you would have to. It's a splash pad, I think that there's. Oh, okay, that's fine.
Something like that.
And then I think it's. In terms of.
Yeah, so. People, restaurants, stores, and that's exactly what we Yeah, well. You know. Yeah. 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 Oh, I love that.
Yeah, they small and things. And then.
And price crossing that, okay? That's what it would be like there. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
See, I didn't. So if you have. Also, this here, and it's not. I have. This one is that you want this, and then after that, and use it out. I mean, they have this as a.
But yeah, we do like in there. We started. Like they were talking to each other. But like, there's a pause. Oh, really? So then. And it's incredibly wrong. I'm like clean, but I just walk. They just try to suck me. When I really go on, man, I know like these you know, like this is basically it's from the street, it's on, you know, you don't feel like it, because it's when they, you know, so, like, so that becomes on more than yes. Yes, but you want to make me right. You try to build it. We're right there. You come out. Okay. They asked them. I'm grateful for that. No, the most, thing.
So I don't want to.
I know. Over here.
Yeah, I wrote it in this one, so I'm gonna give it to you, and I'm gonna take this one. Okay, great.
I think the question part about space.
Have you ever gotten to a situation where there's like a shouting match?
What?
Have you ever gotten to a situation where there's like a shouting match between within a group?
At a public meeting, yes. Yeah. Not with a group this small.
Okay, I'll have you report on that one first.
Okay. I'm gonna hold it up.
And
Yeah, just, yeah. If somebody wants to watch.
okay, it's available.
That's what we said. One second, this is West. This is my house right here, and I can see the best sun.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start talking from where you are, that you can stay where you are. That's fine. So we're gonna just recap a little bit about what we heard at each of the stations. So Gabby's gonna tell us about what we heard about the vacant opportunity areas first.
Okay. I was gonna try to hold it up, but I don't have two hands available. Oh, gosh.
Now you got it. They all started coming at me.
Thank you, Danny. Okay. Okay. So this is our vacant area that we've been talking about. You guys are all familiar because you got to look at it. There were a lot of conversations about having it continue to be park space. Because of the Centennial Trail that's gonna eventually, I think next year, Carlos said, is gonna start being built. And then what to do with the rest of the area. There was a conversation, and I think there's a bit of a contention about whether or not parking should be in the area, because if it's a destination for a trailhead, you might need a parking lot for the people who want to be there. But if it's going to be more of a neighborhood area, parking may not be wanted. People are also suggesting, because it's going to be a trailhead destination, it could have like skateboards with stuff for young people. I think there was a conversation about like these bike trails that go off. And then somebody else, and I think it was Annie, because I recognize his handwriting, wrote Dementia Village and Daycare, which is adult care and childcare, and like assisted living. Was that yeah, assisted living.
With a sunset view.
Yes, because it faces that direction. It has a sunset view, so the area should be called Sunset View. So did I miss anything from any other groups? Okay.
Oops. Any other comments on that? What happened there? Good, good. Okay. So the neighborhood commercial, there was a question that came up about how are the gray dots chosen? The gray dots were the ones that indicated that they were on private property. So Carlos,
Yeah, I believe there were 3 gray dots. 2 of those, one would have been on Old Bonham School and the other one on Logo School. And that's how they were chosen. So it would be another jurisdiction or public agency that could provide that opportunity. And then the corner of Old Bonham and Dealman only because it's centrality on Old Bonham.
so I listened to a couple groups talk about that, and they pretty quickly dismissed the gray dots as not being viable because of the locations. So I didn't hear from all groups, but is that kind of your consensus? And then there were some interesting ideas for alternative locations that were noted on that map. And based on what I heard, it seemed like interest in the idea if it was on public, on like in the parks. Is that correct? There weren't a lot of notes on there, so I'm surmising, but am I surmising correctly? Perhaps not, Carol.
I think we talked about, we really value our parks, so we didn't want them permanently developed.
Okay, so that no permanent structures note came from that.
Yeah, but we were thinking, I mean, correct me if I misinterpreted, but temporary things like something you could wheel in and wheel out.
Mhm.
Ice cream on wheels.
Okay.
Right.
That was one of the things that all of that really wanted to do was preserve nature. So if you want to bring in food trucks, if you want to bring in an ice cream truck or some little stand, something that would be relegated essentially to already a paved area.
There was some disagreement on that too,
Okay.
because people want also nature's wonderful and we're preserving all the parks, but people want to be able to use their parks for other sources of recreation and uses.
There's also some stars on the map back there, which I think 2 groups were looking at those, the second and third one. And those were, if I remember right, where food trucks could go for like coffee for the people who work in those industrial areas in the parking lots.
We had actually a different kind of star, and Eric, can you?
Sure. Well, one was what's been considered our 9-mile, like Cottleville, and then others were what we call kid-centered recreation, such as a jump zone or Sky Zone type place that was that is not currently here, but that it's close to the bike trails and the parks, that it then becomes a place where multi-level kind of recreation for that type of indoor and possibly outdoor. Other than kid-centered recreation, we don't have another name, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's similar to what ideas I heard Robel offer in on a couple different stations, just like what can be done to create destinations where people want to go. Robel, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, not only that, but like a destination that like places around St. Louis, not just all of it, come for like an attraction that's known.
Mhm.
That's why they would come, oh, all of it has this, no other place has type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
With-
I think also as we begin to look at private-public partnerships. So particularly in the industrial area where there's these large parking lots that are not being utilized anymore,
Mhm.
to where we might be able to do something again on a temporary basis, but
Mhm.
just kind of
Okay.
see what's going.
Okay, yeah, and you put some stars that's okay. Now I'm getting your thinking now because I saw stars in that industrial area. Yeah.
So we're thinking. If somebody wanted, like in Provell, wanted to sell coffee in Stacy Park in the morning. A little food cart thing, that might be neat, because you wouldn't be adding more impervious space to the park.
Mm-hmm.
Activity in the park itself,
Mm-hmm.
just be a small thing that, they're temporarily to. So we're thinking something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or selling ice cream at the community center.
I would put in, that is feasible, but I just feel like we need to market and make sure that a large percentage of people know about it, or else it's not worthy of even trying to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. So there would be people who would come to visit the park for that purpose, or just be awareness of the business.
Yeah, and like to start something like that, it wouldn't just be a coffee or just one thing. It would be like a food truck, big thing every once in a while. Then it would distribute to something smaller, like
Yeah.
once a week coffee, or even if it comes to the point every other day coffee, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Dawn?
Well, I would imagine that there would have to be an established, commercial, or it would have to be a good opportunity for that retailer. And so I think that's where you were coming from is, it has to establish itself and then it can be. I think I was
Mhm.
belaboring the point.
Yeah. No, that's good. But I think the point would be, collaboration with businesses maybe that were in town to kind of see how that might work for them, as well as like meeting the needs of the community and the being sensitive to the park. So ideas to explore there. So the last area is a little bit harder to characterize because there were I think it was hard for everybody to visualize, okay, what are we supposed to be thinking about here? So I heard a number of ideas that I think we'll just have to kind of think through. But I think there was interest in, first really getting the lay of the land to understand what was there. But something I heard consistently was having more opportunities where the buildings are closer to the street, the parking's behind. I think I heard all three groups mention that at some point. Does that sound right? And it was not just unique to one of the districts, but throughout, as opportunities arise to get those buildings closer to the street so that there's not as much parking facing Olive. I think there's interest in that. A lot of people talked about connectivity like it wasn't exactly thinking about the character area. So it wasn't exactly following our instructions, but I think it was hard. I think it was hard for people not to think about connectivity north, south of Olive and how you bring people through there. We'll decipher notes and put them together for that. But those were a couple of things I heard about. And then also just continued interest in the destinations idea that came from Robel when he was at that table, but just thinking about how you can bring more of that. And then also maybe thinking about public spaces. Rod was talking about opportunities, maybe even at the East End over time, perhaps as land, as the land comes up for sale and so on, maybe thinking more about extending the public plaza areas down to that end where there are a lot of workers. So some interesting ideas for us to think about from that as well. Any other?
I think
Yeah.
walkability
Mhm.
in terms of if you're gonna have the the businesses up against the street to begin to make it safer, make people feel safer walking along
Yeah.
Olive.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for playing the games today. Appreciate it. So before we let you go, we'll just tell you quickly what's coming up next. So we'll be doing focus groups and stakeholder interviews. Most of that will take place in August. And then we have a meeting with city staff that is at the near the end of August, where we're talking about actions, specific actions for the strategies. And so we're drafting that, and there's a process where we are going through with Carlos and Dawn, who are so excited about it, that we're but we're starting to draft pieces of the report and show it, or the plan, and show it to them leading up to that city staff presentation and workshop. We have another joint meeting with PCDC and City Council that'll happen shortly after Labor Day to have kind of the same conversations about local actions and the framework that we shared with you. And then we have your next meeting, which will be October 12th. And at that point, we have a draft plan to share with you. So we'll be going over a draft plan. So there's a lot of writing that we do between now and then to flesh out some of these ideas.
12, same time.
Yes, same time, and there'll be dinner. Yes, Steph? Yes. Yeah, so there will be a public, a survey that's for the general public, and we'll promote that the same way we promoted the first survey. It hasn't been written yet. It's going to be, we know some areas that we want to ask more questions about, like density and mass on Olive, to get a better sense of that. And then a handful of other questions, probably, well, anyway, yes. So there's going to be, it's more about strategies we use to accomplish the goals that have been set out, and get some public feedback on that. Okay, yeah.
Give us an update about Rise's focus on the apartments and what they're learning.
Yeah. Be curious.
Yeah,
So there,
I'm very concerned about participation from the apartment buildings in our
yes.
engagement. And
Yeah.
I feel like we're leaving them out. We
Well,
don't hear from
so
them.
what we have, like I said, there were 11 out of 351 of our survey respondents were renters. So they're one of the focus groups that we'll meet with in August. So we're going to recruit from those that completed a survey. And then if we want a group of about 10. So for all the focus groups, it's a group of about 10 people that we're going to ask specific questions of to get feedback from the groups that are missing, and renters is one of those. Yeah.
One thing I noticed, at least on the street where we live, which is a dead end, but it's maybe 20 houses or something like that. We only got 2. When the dots were up there were only 2.
Mhm.
We're going to do anything more into the neighborhoods to publicize this strategy survey and some of that kind of stuff. I know there was stuff on the plaza out here, and there were things around on the streets, but I just didn't see a lot of outreach into the neighborhoods.
As well as the north side.
Yeah, I think efforts were made, like we did specific mailings north.
Oh,
to
no,
try to get north, because we knew that was going to be tough. Neighborhoods, we reached out to all subdivision trustees. We tried to get things in the newsletter that goes to every household. So we would be doing the same things again.
Okay. I would
What are
encourage trying to get, I think late in the process, I got a sign and put it up in terms of there, but I would encourage trying to get more signs into, not that we necessarily need more of these yard signs, but nonetheless, to try to get more participation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the apartment, I think I echo what Carol is saying about the apartments.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
So,
So we can, for the final survey, we can think about and maybe enlist help from all of you on doing maybe a flyer blitz to apartments.
And that's really the goal, because if you consider the 12 to 14 members of the advisory committee, and then there's a little overlap on the commission, but there's an additional 5 commission members. So now we're up to about 19 or 20. Then there's the 5 council members, that gets us to 25. Parks Commission, Economic Development Commission, now there's 30. And if each one of those 30 talk to at least 3 to 5 neighbors, it's 150 people. So we have the potential to do that, but it takes, it's a lot of resources, it's a lot of energy.
What about door hangers?
QR codes, social media.
Yes.
Yeah, that will definitely happen.
Yeah.
And
And it
everybody
happened last time.
Yeah,
Well,
Kiana
I
did a
know we
great
had the
job with
QR
social
codes, but
media.
we didn't have things to put on households.
We didn't do door hangers.
Right.
Yeah. So we can think about how that could happen.
Yeah.
Maybe in targeted areas where we're low.
Right.
And Rebel, social media, and when I say we did it before, it was through city channels. Do you have ideas for other, you know?
I mean, through Facebook and Instagram, that's why I mentioned like last meeting, like that's the prime source. Everybody's on their phone, so they're always gonna be bound to see it. So once they follow all of it, that's like the first thing. The first step you have to do is make sure people of all of it are following all of its whatever social media handle. And then from there, you just have to post content like videos, whatever that promotes coming to this.
Yeah. So we'll continue to, like, Kiana's been really good for us promoting through all of it social media pretty
Mhm.
consistently. And we see a bump every time she does. So we know that works.
she
Um,
posts even when I don't ask her to,
yeah.
and it's wonderful.
So I think to Carlos's point, there's a lot that we can do. I feel like there's a lot we've done. It doesn't matter as much as what you do. Because someone getting a e-blast from Kiana is not the same as getting an email from Carol. And they know Carol. So I think keep that in mind, because we've done all the like best practice things you do in engagement to reach a wide variety of people. I think we can do something more concentrated this time around on apartments. And, you know, we can look at the map and see where we're low and think about doing some targeted door hangers. But really, it's word of mouth is going to mean more to people than all the stuff that we do, because now we're to the really hard part. I mean, we've gotten the word out, you know. I think the rule is you try to tell people 7 different ways or something like that. So we've put all these things out there, but now we're to the people that are hard to get. So know that we're doing these focus groups because we know this is hard, and we're going to be bringing those people together to have a very deliberate conversation. And then just we'll give you all tools when we have this survey ready, and help us promote the heck out of it. Just share it with your networks, put it on your social media. We'll give you the tools to do that, and that'll help a lot.
And we'll be doing all the same things we did last time. I know everybody who's given us an email will get an e-blast from me,
Mhm.
but again, getting it, nobody knows what my name is. Everybody knows you guys. So, but yeah, we'll be doing all the same things we did just to make sure all of our bases are covered, but you guys are the real superstars here.
And we'll see how our recruitment goes for focus groups. We might be reaching back out to you if we're leaving a long lead time to recruit for those to make sure we can get people signed up. But if we struggle and we need more renters to get to our focus group, or we need more Asian Americans, or we need more African Americans or Black residents, then we might be reaching back to all of you to kind of help us form those groups and make sure that we get at least 10 people in each.
And I'll stress one more thing.
Mhm.
I mean, because of the group here, none of you are neighbors. Nobody lives behind one or the other, and we did that purposely. If we were to map out where everybody is in this group, in the community.
I think his mic died.
You have a whole certain area. And that's why we did that. And we were very cognizant. And again, 3, 5 people, that multiplies quickly. Sometimes that's bad too, but but it gets the word out.
Question. One thing I haven't seen so far is any questions with regards to how all of that fits into surrounding areas and regionalism? I haven't seen much of that. And actually, I think on the survey, there were a couple of people who did not live in all of that. It's fine, but I just wonder how that's being handled, et cetera. And what are your plans with, yes.
Oh, sorry. As well, we're still thinking about how to put regionalism in. So a couple of the interviews that we're going to be doing, the conversations that we're going to be having in August are with the communities that run along the Olive Corridor. So thinking about how Creve Coeur, University City and Olivet kind of think together about Olive. So that's one concrete way that we're really trying to think beyond Olivet's borders. And then another meeting that's being, that will take place is with Overland to think about just how Overland and the relationship between the two cities and how they can benefit each other. The broader region, we're still kind of thinking through how that comes into the plan. We know Olivet's part of a large county in a region, and we're still figuring out exactly how that goes into the plan. At one time, it was going to be a chapter with specific actions that had to do with regionalism. I think it's more looking like now it'll be an approach that filters into each of the chapters. And so it will play a role in how we think about economic development, how we think about land use, how we think about housing as part of a region, but not have its own specific chapter.
I would suggest things like non-governmental organizations, things like 39 North, as
Mhm.
well as speaking with like some of the overlays of governments. I mean, there's the 900-pound gorilla in the room is, East-West Gateway and Better Together. How like in 20 years, this is supposed to last 20 years. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I don't know what the feeling is of all of that. And does all of that have enough strength to make it go one way or another?
I think the desire for all of it is that it remains like an independent community, not merged. And we don't know what that is going to look like, if it's going to look like anything. We don't know. But I think from what I've heard Olivet say, Olivet wants to be a self-contained, self-served community into the future. So I think that will be part of the vision. I mean, that's going to be stated in the plan as the intention for that's what we're hearing from the residents and from the city. They want to remain independent. But if there's anything else like you want us to factor in with regionalism or explore, let me know.
Well, things like, the west side of the Monsanto Bayer, that's going to be redeveloped. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly how it's going to be developed or what plan, but that's something on a periphery. It's really going to affect us. As well, the growing Gatesworth property on Delmar, there's a fair amount of apartments in that area coming online too in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just gonna echo that because what I've heard when talking with other friends mostly is that the feeling of, to Rod's point of where the vacant Bear and then the development at 170, one thing has come up is I'm feeling they have used the words boxed in, like it's come
Yeah.
from both directions, and where they have most put the analogy is on towards that North Hanley or Brentwood corridor, where it just feels like they don't want it to see it come boxed in like that. I don't know the way to describe. That's the words they've used is like,
Okay.
we're feeling it from both sides from this current vacant Bear coming, which is much larger. It's a couple hundred acres, 95. So just to add to
Yeah.
that
Okay.
region, the most current, I mean, it's just not even a mile down the road, so.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. anybody has any notes in their playbook, can you make sure we get them?
Yes.
Making sure, 'cause this one's the end. This is you. I don't know if they-
And then.